I'm 105 years old, and the biggest liar I ever met wasn't a person. It was time. People lied to me, sure. Bosses, friends, politicians on the radio. You learn to expect that. But time doesn't lie loud. Time lies quiet. It sits there like a polite neighbor and makes you think, no rush, do it later. And if you believe that, it will take your life apart without ever raising its voice. So if you're watching this and you keep telling yourself, I'll call later, I'll visit later, I'll say I'm sorry later, I'll slow down later, please hear me. Later is where love goes to die. Her name was Nora. Not my wife as a label, Nora as a person. She had a dimple in her left cheek that showed up when she tried not to smile. She drank tea strong enough to wake the dead, and she kept pennies in a jar by the back door and called it an emergency fund, like the world was always one bad day away from trouble. We met in 1942 at a dance hall during the war. The music was too loud, the floor was cheap wood, and everyone was pretending they weren't scared. I asked her to dance, and she said, "You look like you've got two left feet." I said, "That's why I need help." She laughed and took my hand like she didn't mind guiding me. That was Nora. She could tease you and still pull you closer in the same breath. We married at the courthouse because I was shipping out soon. Afterward, we ate ham sandwiches at a little diner. And I remember Nora leaning across that table, looking me straight in the eye and saying, very calm, "Promise me you'll come back." I said, "Of course." I meant it, but I didn't control it. That's the first trick time plays on young people. It makes you feel like you're steering everything. I did come back. A lot of men didn't. So when I got home, I decided I would build a life so solid nothing could shake it. A real home, a steady job, money in the bank, a roof that didn't leak. Nora wanted that too. We weren't chasing some fantasy. We were just trying to make a life that didn't wobble. And that's where time really started lying to me. Because once you have kids and bills and a job that never stops asking for more, you start living on one word: later. Later we'll take the trip. Later we'll go to the lake. Later I'll sit on the porch with you. Later I'll stop bringing work home in my head. Nora warned me about it. She used to say, "Don't push everything to later. Later gets crowded." And I would smile like a confident husband and say, "We've got time." I said that so many times, it became part of the furniture. We had two kids, a boy and a girl. Nora kept the whole house running. School papers, scraped knees, dinners, birthdays, dentist appointments I didn't even know existed until she reminded me. And I worked. At first I told myself, I'm doing the right thing. Then I told myself, this is just the season we're in. Then I stopped thinking about it at all. Nora would ask me to sit outside with her at night, just for a little air. "Come out," she'd say. "In a minute," I'd answer. And that minute would turn into an hour, then bedtime, then tomorrow, then next week. Sometimes she'd tell me something small, something that mattered because it was ours, and I'd nod while my mind stayed at the plant. Nora would stop and ask, "You hear me?" And I'd get irritated, because being asked if you're listening feels like being accused. "I hear you," I'd say, but hearing isn't the same as being there. One summer, Nora begged me, just one day, to take the kids to the lake. I kept saying, when work slows down. Work never slowed down. It never does. There's always one more shift, one more order, one more "they need you." So Nora took the kids without me. I came home to an empty house and felt a strange sting, like I'd been left out of my own life. When they got back, the kids were sunburned and happy. Nora looked tired, but her eyes were brighter. She said, "You would have liked it." I said, "Next time." Nora didn't argue. She just nodded. And that nod, quiet tired, polite. Was time slipping another year out of my pocket? Years went by like that. Not dramatic, not tragic, just busy, ordinary. And that's the lie. Time lies by being ordinary. It doesn't feel like your life is passing. It feels like you're just getting through the week. Then the kids grew up and left. The house got quiet. And one night after dinner, Nora looked at me and said, "Now it's just us again." She said it like relief and like a question. And I didn't know what to do with just us. Because I had trained myself to be useful at work and awkward at home. Nora started reaching less, talking less, asking less. And if you're not careful, you mistake that for peace. Then came the turning point. It wasn't a shouting match. It wasn't a big scene. It was a broken plate in the sink. Nora dropped it and stared at the pieces like she didn't understand what happened. I said, "You cut?" She shook her head and sat down like her body suddenly felt heavy. At the doctor's office, Nora watched the clock on the wall tick, tick, tick. She leaned toward me and whispered, "Everyone's waiting for something." I said, "We're fine." We weren't. They found a tumor. The doctor used gentle words, but the meaning was brutal. On the drive home, Nora finally asked the question that changes everything. How much time? And I did what I always did. I tried to make it manageable with talk. "Maybe we can treat it," I said. "Maybe we—"
Nora turned her face toward me and said very softly, "Don't say later to me anymore."
That sentence hit me like cold water, because suddenly time wasn't quiet and polite anymore. Suddenly, it had teeth. We did go to the ocean once, because she had always wanted to go. But we went late. Late fall, cold wind, gray water. Nora bundled up on a bench holding her tea. I said, "We made it." Nora said, "We made it late." Then she reached for my hand. And listen, that's the part I can't forget. Even after all my later, she still reached. Her hand was lighter than I expected. She squeezed once, just one squeeze, like a sentence without words. "I'm here. Are you? Now?" Not long after that, she went into the hospital, and time started stealing things I didn't know it could steal. Names, memories, pieces of the past. One day she looked at me and said, "Are you my brother?" That's when I learned time doesn't only take the future. It takes the past too. Nora died in that hospital, and I held her hand at the end. Her fingers were colder. The squeeze was gone. But I held on anyway, because what else do you do when you finally understand? And here's the insult. The world kept moving. Coffee smell in the hallway, elevator dinging, nurses laughing softly down the hall. Time didn't pause to respect my grief, because time isn't a friend or an enemy. It's worse than both. It's indifferent. So if you're watching this, I'm not here to preach. I don't know your life. I'm just telling you what I wish someone had told me. Plain. Stop trusting later. Say the kind thing now. Make the visit now. Hold the hand now. Sit on the porch now. Because one day you'll realize you saved up a whole pile of laters, and none of them can buy back one ordinary Tuesday with the person you love. That's the lie time told me, and I believed it for almost a century. Don't do what I did, not if you still have a warm hand to hold.